Parades are part of small town celebrations. There's marching bands, floats, dance troupes, and dignitaries like mayors. My next guest is the mayor of Fairport, New York, which happens to be my hometown. Julie Domaratz was elected mayor in 2018 and has been serving her beloved community since then. She's a yoga practitioner and now a participant in Fairport's yearly parades. I'm excited for you to meet her, so let's get started. Welcome to the Youthful Older Yogi podcast. I'm MJ Waddell, your yogi host and founder of Share Yoga. I've been practicing, teaching, and loving yoga for over 25 years. I'm an advocate of movement, creativity, and staying healthy in mind and body after 50. And so are my guests. It's never too late to start, and there's a lot of healthy years ahead. So let's start now. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining the Youthful Older Yogi. I'm MJ Waddell, the founder and creator of Share Yoga, and I have an amazing guest today. I'm so excited for you to meet her. Her name is Julie Domaratz, and Julie and I are from the same hometown. We are from Fairport, New York. We went to the same high school together, graduated, and now Julie is the mayor of Fairport. And a yoga teacher. We met several years ago at a yoga teacher training, and since then, Julie has moved back to her family home in Fairport with her husband and her fur babies. And prior to yoga teaching, she worked at Xerox for a while. And if you're unfamiliar with upstate New York, this is Western New York. Fairport is a suburb of Rochester, New York, and it sits right on the historic Erie Canal. So Julie and I both have a deep adoration for our hometown. So I'm so excited, Julie, that you took time out from your busy schedule to be on the Youthful Older Yogi. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, MJ. I'm so excited to have an opportunity to sit and chat with you. And it's great to be together again after a space and time of being apart.
Yes, I agree. Well, let me ask you this. How do people address you? Mayor Julie, Mayor, how should I address you?
You can just call me Julie.
Okay.
It's a really weird transition into being an elected official. After spending your whole life of either Julie Teachman, that was my maiden name, or Sean's mom, Julie Kavanaugh, in my last iteration of life, or Julie Domaratz. Now everybody addresses me as mayor, or they may say Mayor Julie, and it's a weird transition to having people talking to you that way, because in my head, I'm really just Julie. But now after almost 6 years, I've gotten really used to the fact that nobody calls me by my first name anymore, at least in the workplace. They're just, hi, Mayor. How, that's my name now, Mayor.
That's amazing. That's so cool. And it's a very, admirable title. So I think that's really cool. No one ever calls me, hey, Yogi MJ. That would be kind of cool too. Let's start from what made you decide to run for mayor back in 2017 or 2018?
I ran in 2018. I moved back into Fairport in 2015 with my husband, and I've never really been political. While he will describe things that I've told him about my previous iterations of life, that I've always been an activist in a non-formal way. I moved back in, and I love this community. That's why we moved here. And while Fairport is a great place, and if I knocked doors in 2018, I would say to people, what do you love about Fairport? And they're like, it's the best. It's a wonderful place, and my heart is here, but I knew that we could be doing more to make this an amazing place. And I could see the opportunity that was here to transform this community one step further and beyond.
And I love it that you're a native of Fairport, first of all, and that's very important that you grew up here and your family has a home there. And same with mine. My family has been in Fairport for a couple generations. So it's really important. So you've undoubtedly have had many challenges as a mayor. And so I wonder, how do you approach your constituents or coworkers or just Joe on the street, who are those inflexible, immovable, or possibly even unwilling to discuss any new ideas or changes that might come to mind that you want to express?
I think that this is an example of where my yoga education really impacts my life as a mayor. Sometimes when you're with people, they just want to be heard. I'm a very reactive person by nature. Part of our study as learning to be yogis in self-study is how do I take a breath and a pause and step back and notice. So sometimes this work with constituents is learning to, one, listen, whether you're listening to your body or listening to what's going on around you. Some of this work with constituents, people you work with, it's just learning to listen. Sometimes it's people just want to be heard.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They don't necessarily want you to take action on everything they do, or they in a perfect world, they would love it, but they're happy just to be heard because they haven't been heard.
Mm-hmm.
Other times it's of validating their feelings and then trying to reach a place of how can we work together on something or see the bigger picture, and sometimes there's nothing I can do to satisfy the desire of a constituent or somebody who lives in this community. I hate to use that word constituent because when people come and talk to me, I explain to them, hey, I'm just your neighbor. I'm Julie, your neighbor who lives 2 streets over from you. I'm not some unknown quantity elected official. I'm just your neighbor. And when I knock doors, that's part of the conversation. I'm your neighbor. I live 1 street over, and I'm looking for you to hire me or to tell me about what you want to see happen here in the Village of Fairport. Tell me what you like about it. Tell me what you don't like about it. There will always be times that I can't fix everything, nor can anyone, and the people pleaser part of us wants to be able to fix everybody's problems.
Yeah.
I'm a born people pleaser. I think that's how you end up in this kind of a role is I want to make people happy. I want to make them like the community. I want to make them like what I'm doing. But again, sometimes it's just turning off the I want to react and I want to speak. This happened yesterday morning. Someone just wanted to be heard. And I had to, in my head, slow down the conversation. This is yogi brain.
Yeah.
And say, step back, listen, and then validate this person's feelings.
Yeah, that's great. It's not, even as a teacher, a yoga teacher, you can't please everyone. And you have to just breathe, listen, and it's hard not to react because sometimes it appears that it's personal, but it never is.
Correct.
Usually it never is. So I always keep that in the back of my mind that I don't know what type of a day they had, but if they come in and they're complaining or bitching about something, I just listen and do the best you can. That's it. So, and we talked.
I just think, you and I know about this book called The Four Agreements. And in the back of my mind, just like you, I have to say, I don't know what your experience has been. I don't know what your life has been. I can't make anybody else do anything. I can only control my own reaction to whatever they deliver to me.
That's right. And if people are unfamiliar, that book is called The Four Agreements. It's by Don Miguel Ruiz. And it's a really short, little concise book. It's got 4 little pearls that you can apply in your life. And they're lovely little gems. I'll put those in the link. So undoubtedly, we talked previously about having a thicker skin, and you expressed that you didn't really care for that term and that you'd rather say, I become more tolerant, which I like that instead of thicker skin. It's like, we all have our skin issues. So it's like, I don't want a thick skin. I want a glowy skin. I don't, so, and can you share with our listeners how you manage just some of and there are haters today in our society. There are, people that are so dissatisfied, and there's a climate of division. So how have you become more tolerant of that?
Again, I think it's using a little bit of what we've learned from yoga and stepping back and realizing it's not about me, it's about them. Honestly, sometimes it's necessary to step away from social media. While I can give you all my links for this, where people can find me, that doesn't mean they'll find me posting very often. I think that it's work because I'll use an explanation that my mom used to tell me. My mom would say, with you, Julie, I always know where you are on something because you wear your heart on your sleeve. I know how you feel. You're very outwardly open. And while I'm still a very open person, I'm not open to everybody. And that doesn't mean that I don't listen and I don't care. It just means that you can't expose your heart to everybody because it's a harsh world. And there's a lot of work that we all have to do to try and bring more kindness, more peace, more tolerance into this world. And it's not just on a national level that these things happen. They happen on a local level. This is a village of 5,500 people. And to say that political violence and just downright nastiness doesn't happen within the neighborhood, that's why I say, I'm just your neighbor. It does. And I don't want to say that I have a thicker skin. I just believe that I can't take everything personally and that I have to work to really understand how to separate myself and separate, which is a very hard thing, by the way, to separate myself from what's being directed in my direction.
Yeah, it's knowing when to put your shield up, I think, and knowing when to put the armor on. You intuitively know that this is going to pierce my heart. That's not worth it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's.
I like to think of this role. I love the Strength Tarot card. For someone who doesn't know what this card is, the Strength card is about Leo. It's got a lion on it. I'm a Leo. And it's a woman who has the jaws of the lion open. And the strength is not the fact that she has the jaws of the lion open. It's the soft strength and the soft control that she can put her head and her face close to the jaws of that lion and it's not going to bite her. And that's not because she's a weightlifter and a strong man. It takes finesse and it's soft strength, soft control, and you have to learn how to build that kind of strength to do this job.
I love it. So how would you say, well, we kind of talked about this as I'm looking at my notes. So some of the principles of yoga that come off the mat into your role, into your career today are, besides, taking a breath, not taking it personally, are there any other principles? There's so many in yoga. But are there any more different principles that particularly you've been able to use in your career?
Okay, so as my teacher, you're going to have to cut me some slack because I never learned and internalized all the terminology for these different principles.
I'm not your teacher, Julie. I'm your neighbor.
Self-study. Yeah. Can we talk about self-study?
Yes, Gaia. That's what it's called in Sanskrit.
Gaia.
Yep.
And you are the one who taught me that term in one of our teachings, and that is a principle of my everyday life. I spend a lot of time looking at my behavior, both physically and mentally. Self-study is so important, whether we're on the mat or whether we're in life. And it helps us get to a place of self-acceptance. I think that's an important principle that we can all strive towards. Some of us will never get there, but it's a great striving aspect of our lives. So, accepting yourself on the mat and off the mat, learning how to breathe, learning how to step back and focus on your breath. I'll give you a great example of this. As a 61-year-old, I have braces. Today, I went to get fitted for a whole new set of braces, and she had to apply all these things. Well, I'm sitting there and I have all these tools in my mouth, and the old me could get really kind of nervous, and I'm sure many people could, because you have tools and drains and a drill and everything going on in your mouth. I closed my eyes and I started doing okay, just focus on your breath and counting in and slowing your breath down. And that was a tool that I spent a lot of time in a class with another yogi, Bryan Kest, getting into a pose and staying in a pose for 10 minutes that I never thought that I would ever be able to stay in. That's the yoga of life, getting into a pose and staying there by just following your breath, slowing down your mind, and counting.
Yeah. That
That's
transfers
a yoga principle.
Yeah, it transfers into life, staying in an uncomfortable situation, which we all will experience in our life. And can you run from it? Usually not. If you run from it, that you might run away from it, but it'll find you. So I think those principles, and if you're listening and you don't practice yoga, if you practice any type of discipline, I think the principles are the same. And just learning about your own breath. I think the first step, people always say, you always talk about the breath. Yeah, like it's being aware of your breathing. That's the first step. Just being aware that you inhale and you exhale. That's what I tell people. Just start there. And then it really does, if you practice that, it really does change things. And just like you in the dentist chair, it's like instead of, having a panic attack, we just have these tools where we can focus on our breath. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make it a lovely situation, but it can bring down the anxiety and the fear and things like that. So I love that. So thank you for sharing that.
You mentioned a word that I'll stop you just to add this. You mentioned a word that's a very, very important line that comes from yoga practice is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's a practice that you take into every day of your life. Can you find comfort in knowing that everybody has a place of uncomfortability, but you breathe through it? You focus on your breath, and it helps you focus on that versus the being uncomfortable.
Right, because I'm sure your first day as mayor, you didn't feel all comfortable and rainbows and unicorns. Probably the first year. It's just like the first time you walk into a yoga studio, if you've never done yoga before. Oh my God, because you don't know what's going on. So it is, yes, that discomfort it's prevalent throughout your life. And most people don't realize that they make it through. You make it through that stuff and you come out better for it. So yes, thank you for adding that. So can you explain the 5 styles and the animals for our listeners?
Sure. I really would describe these as trying to understand how other people and yourself, how we all deal with conflict. And then it makes it a little bit easier to try and work together. This was a workshop that I did through my job. Well, let's start with the turtle. The turtle is someone who is completely conflict averse. They run and hide in their shell. And I can honestly say that's how I used to deal with conflict earlier in my life, that it was easier to just, I'm walking away. You know, I don't want to fight. I don't want to get into this. You could describe this as people who give you the silent treatment because they just don't want to talk about it. So turtle is number one. Owl is what I would call the compromiser. It's looking for a way to compromise and find a solution that will, somebody has to give a little, somebody has to take a little, but can you find a level of compromise from this conflict? It's definitely not walking away from it. It's trying to work through it. The fox. So we're on number 3. The fox is an agent of consensus. Can we find a place where we all agree? And sometimes that's really useful when you meet somebody who you think you are total opposite sides of the situation and there's a lot of conflict, but maybe you have shared values in some other area. And when you can find those shared values, you can reach a place of consensus and work through the opposite ends of the conflict. The shark. I have never been a shark. A shark is someone who loves the conflict. I think we all know people, maybe not a lot of them. I don't think there's as many sharks as there are these other types. The sharks are those people who just want to battle it out no matter what. And they like the win. It's a conflict, and it's not over unless they're winning and really enjoy the battle. And then the last one is the teddy bear. The teddy bear is kind of squishy. It just wants people to get along. They're not walking away or hiding the way the turtle is. They're just like, can't we just find a place to get along? And those are the 5 conflict styles that I think many people have. And it's when you start to recognize what yours is. Back when I started doing all this yoga training was when I realized the link to the turtle style that I had. And instead of trying to work through conflict, I just walked away. And it was a learned style that I learned from my family group, that, that's how people in my family dealt with certain types of conflict. And so I followed suit and followed the way that I learned to deal with conflict.
And look at where you are now, from the turtle to where you are now. That's a big shift, being the job that you have. My gosh, I think you're probably the owl or the fox. Am I right?
I'm a compromise. I think I'm a little bit of both.
Yeah.
There are times when I will look for places of compromise. We'll give a little, we'll take a little. And there's places where I look for consensus. Can we find a spot in this big picture that we can all agree on?
Yeah. And right now you cannot be a turtle. In your job, you can't be. So that's pretty amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I just thought that I've been thinking about that ever since we had our chat, and kind of as I go through my day or I teach or whatever I do, I'm like going, which animal am I right now? It's really interesting. I like it. It's another form of self-study as well. So that's,
I was going to say we're both doing that sadhya.
Yeah, sadhya, yes.
I wanted to pop in to thank you for listening to the Youthful Older Yogi. It's season 2, and I'm so excited to bring you more great guests, education, and ways for you to stay youthful in mind and body after 50. If you love the show and want to help me make it even better, please consider becoming a supporter. You get to choose how much and how often you give, and there's no commitment. And remember, I donate a portion of every dollar I receive to charity. For 2024, I've chosen UNICEF. Just click the support button in the show notes. And just as helpful is sharing the show with other youthful older yogis. Thank you again so much for listening. And now let's get back to the podcast.
We talk about making a difference. We've talked about this. And sometimes you never really know if you are making a difference until, years later, somebody says something, just like when you see Oprah saying, I remember my fourth grade teacher or someone, but we always strive to, we hope we're making a difference. So I love the story that you told me about, it was during COVID, about the difference you made for the couple that had an extremely uncertain outcome in their lives. And I'd love if you would share that story with our listeners.
Sure. So turn your clock back to November of 2020. We were all pretty much locked down. There were not supposed to be more than 9 people in one location at a time. And the next street over from where I live, a neighbor of mine, his daughter was a nurse at the University of Rochester, which is in this area. And her fiance was a medical student who was a resident at the University of Rochester, Kat and Soham. I'll leave it at Kat and Soham. So Kat was a nurse, Soham was a resident. Soham is from India. And if you can turn your mind back to November 2020, it was a little bit scary for people who were not US citizens on whether they would be allowed to stay here or not due to what was happening at a federal level in the United States at the time. And they wanted to get married. They had not planned to get married in November of 2020 during a shutdown in the beginnings of the pandemic, but they were very afraid that something might happen and they might be separated. Soham might be sent back to India, or that anything like that could happen. So Kat's father approached me about marrying them, because one of the cool things that you can do when you're a mayor is you are allowed to marry anyone inside your jurisdiction. So in the Village of Fairport, I can conduct a wedding. I had never done a wedding before. I had never even thought about doing weddings until I was told that when I became a mayor. Kat and Soham got their bridal group together and they created their vows and they sent them to me and they got their license. And we met at Village Hall on a Saturday afternoon when there was nobody around. And I had my mask on and they had their 9 people, which were friends of the couple and her parents. His parents were on Zoom on a cell phone from India. And I got them married. And it's a really, really touching story to be present in somebody's life in that way. And what was even more remarkable to me, and it's one of those things that'll just make you go, oh, and give you goosebumps. I got a card from Kat and Soham that was a Happy New Year's card. And it was a picture of them with his parents here in the United States. They've since moved out of Rochester. He's moved on with his medical career, and she is continuing to be a nurse. And they've moved to the other side of New York State. But there was a picture of them with his parents who had come to the United States and her parents. And then there was a picture of a sonogram because they're having a baby. And they thought enough to send me the card that had all these lovely, beautiful pictures. And, that's the squishy part that makes you go, I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to do that and make a difference in those people's lives. And we'll always have a special connection.
Yeah.
Because while it's not earth-changing or earth-shattering in any way in the Village of Fairport, I made a difference in those people's lives, that I could marry them during a time that was so scary and many times uncertain. And it's just wonderful that they're having a baby.
I love the story. I love that you were able to do that. I know they're so thrilled that you were able to do that. And It's just, yeah, those are the times where I go, oh yeah, I did make a difference. When you think you're working so hard all the time, you wonder, what's it all for? What, and so then you can always go back. Oh, it was for that,
Yes.
right? So thank you.
Yes.
Also, you shared with me that you recently have developed an interest in improvisation. Now, I have to say, my last guest also is Leo. She's a yogi. We met, 18 years ago in teacher training. She's an interior designer and she's a Leo, and she also is starting to do improv. She's like, I don't know if it's the Leo in me. I need the limelight. I need to be the center of attention. So you're the second yogi that said that they're interested in improv. Now, for people listening that don't know me, my background is in theater. I've been a theater professional for decades, and I actually teach improv at a performing arts center in Orlando, and I love improv. And improv is all about saying yes and. There's no script. So you have to be fearless to do improv, and it's very rewarding. So please tell me a little bit more about that.
I would love to. I think it centers from looking at The Artist's Way, the book by Julia Cameron, where she talks about making appointments for your creativity. And this started prior to my being elected. I think I probably was looking at that book back around 2017 or maybe around 2018. And there's a local improv teacher who also produces a local radio show. Can I say her name? Because anybody from the Rochester area. So if you're in Rochester, Megan Mack, who produces Connections with Evan Dawson on WXXI, is a really fun yoga teacher or improv teacher. And I was looking for a way to spur some creativity. Growing up, I was that kid who put on The Sound of Music and sang to the record and danced in the dining room. Yes, it's a Leo quality, I think, but pretended I was putting on the play. And, that's where I first met you, was in the drama club at junior high. Not the actress, never became that official performer, but I like being in front of people. So I was looking for a way to add some creativity to my life. And I signed up for some classes at a local studio that got me an opportunity to dip my toes in the water. And I've been back many times. And in fact, when I run into Megan Mack or I sign up for a class to go in, there's a particular character that I created it's a skit that she does on a regular basis. And have you ever heard of something like Goonie Creek?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a character I created, and she'll go, "Is Edna coming back?" And I'll say, "No, Edna died at Goonie Creek, remember?" For me, even more so than doing the yes and of the verbal improv, I like the physical part. I like experience. I'm a kinesthetic learner. I like being in my body very, very much. It's what I loved, and what drew me to yoga in the first place was that being in my body. And when I start in improv, I have big hand gestures, or I love there's a skit, a practice that you do where you have three people and there's a word that is the starting word. So let's say it's bird, and then someone else jumps in with something related to the bird. And while I'm not a violent person, I might jump in with my shotgun, and then somebody else will jump in with another word and an action. But I love the physical being in your body part of improv.
Yes.
And just being free and not constrained by what society's expectations are, a mayor or, a woman. I like that whole, I can be anything I want to be and in my body.
Yes. And I think you said something earlier that, I think all kids act out and all kids are free and creative. There comes a point, I don't know if it's in middle school or somewhere, where all of a sudden they go, oh, I can't do that. It's not cool. It's not expected, which is so sad to me. I was never one of those because I was a dancer and I I have to move my body. It's just, so I think everyone starts out like that. And I would encourage anyone, that's older to go to a class, go to something where you have to move your body. And I don't have to tell you, you already know this. That's what bodies are meant to do. Bodies are meant for movement. And it just changes your outlook, everything. It changes, I mean, plasticity, it changes everything when you move your body. So I'm so glad you're enjoying that and creating characters. And I just love it because this podcast is about staying active, staying creative, and just, as we age, instead of sitting around doing nothing. So that's amazing. Speaking of aging, how do you feel about it?
I actually think it's great.
Good.
I think it's great because I don't plan to settle down anytime soon. And while I may have physical challenges that I have to get through with my body, whether that's, I guess this is a safe space. I have double hip replacements. I've had some surgery on my shoulder because being in your body takes a toll when you age. But I think when you reach a certain age, hopefully you can get to a place where it's freeing to say, I am just me. And it's about time I got to appreciate myself for who I am and think about the good things about myself versus always sitting in the negativity that this world is happy to share with us and that we tend to focus on. Being 61, I'll be 62 this year. I don't feel mentally 61 or 62. I think of myself as the millennial 61 or 62-year-old. I may not be able to operate a computer as fast or a phone as fast. I can't do Instagram on my phone as in any way, shape, or form that a millennial or a Gen Z could. But some of that is having an open mind.
Yeah.
And being open to and curious, which guess what? Those are also properties of being a yogi.
That's yes. Anyone that's reached the age of 60 or over has had something physical in their body. Like there's no way, unless you've been in a bubble, there's no way your body hasn't been through some type of injury or something. And so, yes, I agree with you. Like, I can't do the same things I used to be able to do physically, but that doesn't mean I have to stop doing everything, which is crazy. So correct. I agree with you. And so I try to surround myself with people that are my contemporaries that are not bitching about getting older, because that's when I'm like, it sucks the energy out of me. And because there's always stuff we can complain about, always. So that's another reason I started this podcast, because I wanted to bring on yogis, and not just because you're a yogi, but because my guests are vibrant. They're over 50, most of them. I've had some younger ones on, but it's all about moving forward in life with positivity. So thank you. And currently, what's your favorite yoga pose?
This is hard for me. If you'd asked me this question 10 years ago, I probably would have said something like triangle pose or perhaps some kind of a balance. I think my favorite yoga pose right now is downward dog, but even sitting or standing into a forward fold, because it's a chance to release and just explore, where can I take this to? And being on my yoga mat is so different now. I used to love doing lots of ab work. People would hate to have me in class because I'm like, let's do core today. Let's do boat pose Navasana. Let's do lots of planks. Let's do push-ups. I like all of those things because I am a very physical person, but like just exploring a pose that it may not have all the bells and whistles to it, but it really does, because I'm just exploring where I am and how my body feels, in space. Where can I expand? Where can I look for more lightness? And that might be downward dog because it makes my low back feel great, or stretching into a forward fold to see, again, how can I expand my low back? There's a theme to this with some physical challenges that I deal with right now.
Yeah.
But I like those simple, they're simple poses, but they're very complex.
Exactly. So even, when I think of forward folding, it's a cooling pose, it's a calming pose, it's a total back opening pose, right? And it's also you're closing yourself together, so it's kind of an introspective pose. So all the poses, whether they appear to look simple, all have their complexities. And I think in each season of our life, we will gravitate towards different poses. You know, I'm never going to kick up into a handstand again. I get it. So it's okay, right? Unless I have maybe 5 spotters and a really, really solid wall, right? But things like that. So, and restorative for me is I do at least one class a week of restorative for myself. And I love it. I just love how, and there's so many poses. So, and so many variations and versions. So thank you. Okay, so
yeah, I won't be doing bird of paradise is not happening.
Yeah.
Ever. Probably ever again.
Yeah, and you know what? Back in, when I didn't start yoga till I was in my mid 30s. So, but I was a dancer and could do all the shit, and I was like flexible and blah blah blah. And, all of those extreme poses, they were more ego driven back then. It was ego driven. I admit it, because I could do it. And because I was a trained dancer. So,
Sure.
but now it's like, it's never going to happen again. And so now my practice is not ego driven. It's so shifted. It feels so good. It feels just so good to practice, and with lots of props and everything. And it feels good to teach that way too. So I'm enjoying where my practice is now. My last question is, typically the question is, knowing all you learned and all your life experiences, looking back, what would you tell your younger self? But I like to shift the question to knowing everything that you know now and through all your life experiences, what would you like to tell your older self?
Stay curious, stay active, and keep your sense of humor.
Awesome. Yeah.
I love to laugh. I love to be around people who make me laugh. And I want that to go on forever. I think that's why I like improv so much.
Yeah, it's fun. Complete fun.
I spend more time laughing because I laugh more.
Yeah, laugh more. It's good for you. It's good for you. And so with that in mind, let me ask you a question that I was debating to ask. Do you get to ride in the parades and sit on the back of a car and wave? Because I always would go to the Fairport parades because I lived on East Church Street, and sometimes I'd be in my bike and decorate my bike. And my grandmother, when she was alive, was part of the Golden Age Club, and she would be in a car. And so I'm just wondering, as mayor, do you have to walk or do you get to ride in a car?
I have never ridden in a car, and I will tell you that I don't really walk parades. Parades are something special. They're a chance for me to connect with people.
Okay.
I love a good parade, but by the end of the parade, I have probably run for an hour in little spurts, because I start off in the middle of the street and then I see people I know or I want to go talk to, or even I want to just say hi to. I love going up to little kids and talking to them because they're freaked out that you came over and talked to them. Or I'll stop and thank veterans. Or I see somebody who I haven't seen in a long time. I run to the side, go over, talk, and then usually by that time I'm behind. So I have to run down the street to catch up with the people who I'm walking with. I run parades. You should never do a parade in high heels. I have some kind of either sneaker-based sandal on. And I love parades. That's the thing that's so special about Fairport. Fairport has 2 parades a year. I went to see them because I live right off of Main Street. Growing up, I used to bring my son here to see parades, who's now an adult, and I love parades. Will never, unless I'm injured, I will not be riding in a car. I will probably be running in parades for as long as I can run, because it's a great way to connect with people, and it's so much fun. And you just encourage people to smile and laugh and enjoy it, because we're alive and we have an opportunity to be together to celebrate.
I love it. I love it. I love that you've taken time to be on the podcast, Julie. It's been so nice connecting with you, and I wish you all the best. You have 3 more years left in this term. Is that correct?
Just about 3 more years, yes.
Yeah. Well, I haven't been back to Fairport since I left to move to Florida, since 2019. So maybe in the 3 years, I'll make a return visit, and hopefully we will connect. We'll just make it happen.
We'll make it happen, and I'll give you a tour of Fairport 3.0, the new and improved Fairport with all the great things we have going on here. And I'm so excited that if you can make it back here, because Fairport is a beloved place in many people's hearts, including mine.
Yes. And thank you again. And I wish you the best. Thank you so much, Julie.
Thanks so much for listening. You can find me and subscribe for more youthful and healthy information on my website, shareyogawithmj.offeringtree.com. Or if you know how to navigate social media, find me on Facebook /Mary Jane Waddell. That's Jane with a Y, Jayne. And Instagram @Mary Jane Waddell. Remember, Jane with a Y. Now, this podcast would not be possible without my youthful older producer, editor, and creative friend, Andrea Canny. And you can find Andrea at Andrea Canny, that's CANNY.com. And of course, thanks to my generous guests who've shared their time and youthful wisdom. Remember, the Youthful Older Yogi podcast is presented solely for educational, inspirational, and entertainment purposes. It's not intended as a substitute for a physician or other qualified professionals. Okay, yogis, stay well and stay youthful.